This afternoon, we're going to start with the Awareness to Outcome, a fireside chat led by Dr. Ted Vickey. Ted has over 25 years of experience in exercise science and business with a special expertise in fitness technology. His first client at age 24 was the White House, where he spent 11 years serving the health and fitness needs of the president and his staff. His PhD is from the University of Ireland, Galway, in engineering and informatics, where he collected over 3M fitness tweets and created a classification model that outperforms measures used by Healthy People 2020. Please welcome Ted Vickey to the stage.
I think you're in for a interesting treat. Tom and I were talking in the back from Polar. He's got some interesting stories about how the military uses his applications, but also the NFL. So we might have to talk about that, Tom. But go ahead, give us a background and a little bit about your company.
Yeah, sure. My name's Tom Fowler. I'm the president of Polar USA. My background has been in the sports and technology business now for some 30 years, dating back to years with Nike in Europe, running categories for them, and then most recently, prior to Polar, with Intel, heading up the marketing and sales for their wearable technology division. Been at Polar now just about 4 years. Also have a background a bit as an athlete, raced triathlons professionally back in the early days of triathlon in the 1980s, and still enjoy being an amateur in the sport even today.
And Herbie.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about yourself.
So my background, I don't have the professional fitness credentials that Tom has as a professional athlete, but I have some. My background started in consumer packaged goods, classically trained marketer. I did that for about 9 years or so, and then transitioned over into durable goods. Competed with Tom's company, Polar, for 6 or 7 years at Timex, where I ran the Ironman and Expedition businesses. And then moved on to some other sports durable goods companies such as P90X, UFC. We did a lot of the gear for them. And I've made my way into the, I guess you can call it consumer SaaS, hardware, software businesses, starting with a company called Link AKC. We were funded by the American Kennel Club as a smart tech, pet tech product, who actually won Best of CES in 2017. And then we grew that company, we sold it, and I've been with Myx Fitness now for about just under a year, helping to grow this business.
You know, Tom, when I think back and you think about wearables, Polar was probably one of the first that was out there as a wearable. And you see this progression where you have the professional athletes starting with some technology, and then over the course of time, the general consumer can have access to it. What are some of the data points, some of the things that an athlete or a general exercise person can get by wearing that Polar? Yeah, well,
wearables are ubiquitous on the market today. I mean, you guys all know the brand names. I don't need to tell you how many are out there. The question really is, how do you use the information that Polar or any number of other devices can deliver? We're talking about what's your heart rate been, throughout the day? How many steps have you walked? How did you sleep last night? The plethora of data is enormous and it's vast. And the real question I think that Ted's asking is, well, what do you do with all this stuff? How do you action it? How do you actually improve your life with this? I think the easiest way to talk about that is to give you a quick and easy example. Polar's current generation watches not only do sleep measurement overnight, but we also are measuring, in addition to the quality and character of your sleep, we're also measuring the degree to which your autonomic nervous system has recovered from all of the stresses that were imposed on it the previous day and in the previous 7 days. The degree to which your autonomic nervous system can recover has a tremendous amount to do not only with how well you can perform physically that day, but also mentally, how resilient you can be emotionally. So it really has impact on all dimensions of human performance, not just the physical. Well, we had a woman who bought one of our watches, and she used it for this overnight sleep tracking recovery that we call nightly recharge. And she slept very well. She was sleeping 8.5 hours a night. She had been sleeping 8.5 hours a night for years, and every morning had said, I was waking up fatigued and groggy and not feeling myself at all. And I would have to pour the coffee down and get myself jacked up and ready to go. And I got your watch, and I saw that, yes, I was sleeping well, but my ANS was horrible. And she said to her, well, why is that? Why are they so different? And she happened to have a friend who was a neurosurgeon. And so she asked the guy, what do you think's going on here? And he said, oh, well, you lead a very, very high-octane life. You're super busy. And you're very caffeinated, and you're a very highly wound person. You never calm down. You're sleeping well, but you're not calming down. Sound familiar, Herbie?
Yeah.
And he said, why don't you try sleeping with a weighted blanket? And it's these things called gravity blankets. Maybe some of you have heard about them. Anyway, so she said she went and got herself a gravity blanket, and it was like instant. Her ANS numbers started to climb, and in 4 or 5 days, she was sleeping like a champ and woke up feeling like she was 15 again. This is like a 35-year-old mother of 3. So in terms of what can a consumer get out of these devices? Well, here's an example of somebody being provoked to ask the right questions of why is my ANS so poor when I'm sleeping so well? And what can I do about it? She went and took the corrective action, and she says, now it's like she's cut the caffeine, which of course is helping her wind down, and so on and so forth. So it goes on, and we could give many, many such examples. But if you take the information, ask the right questions of why is that number that way, the answers are actually usually pretty easy to find.
I kind of equate that to the old financial advisor piece, right? Most of us in the room, when we started investing, it was you hired an investor to do it. But now, you can get on E-Trade and do the same thing, but it's that data. And some people can do it by themselves, but some people are going to need a health coach or a personal trainer to help understand that information. Now, Herbie, I watched one of your interviews, and there was something that I really got a chuckle out of. You called Earn Your Shower.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So Earn Your Shower is this philosophy I've actually had for years, even before I started working in the fitness industry, where it's like people always overthink what they need to do to start to make some change and to stay fit. They think, all right, I can't go to the gym, I don't have an hour and a half to do that. So I would always just say, all right, just do what you can when you can. 10, 15, 20 minutes is enough. And that's what I say, earn your shower. If I don't have time to do a typical workout, I'll do what I can. This morning was a perfect example. Some of my team's probably laughing at how quickly I was in the gym this morning. It was 12 minutes.
12 minutes?
12, 15 minutes.
We're in the Polar, yeah.
Yeah, Polar.
Tell us a little bit about what Myx Fitness is.
So Myx Fitness, to understand, first of all, we're entering the connected fitness category in the home. But to really understand what we're doing, you have to understand the consumer landscape, which is critical, right? From a distance, we look like, okay, this is another Peloton. We're in the same categories, Peloton, Tonal, Mirror, Echelon, and some other players that are now moving in that space. But we're very different in the sense that a lot of the players in the category are really going after this consumer that is the top 7 to 10% of the population. And psychographically is really how you understand them. We have them in a segment that we call workout to win. And what motivates a consumer with that mindset is very different than what motivates a different consumer. So leaderboards, that type, power data, cadence data, some of that is what really motivates them. There's another much bigger segment of the population, which is about 40.5%, but 41% we'll say, that we call workout for me. And those are consumers that are really looking to work out just to do a little bit of what I just said, earn your shower, but live a better life, be balanced, have mobility, have longevity, know that 20, 30 years from now they'll be in great shape for their grandkids and have a fulfilling life. That consumer, what motivates them, a lot of what the current players in the fitness category, for the most part, whether they're connected, whether they're brick and mortar gyms or other brands, actually a lot of the marketing there turns off that consumer. They're not looking for that competition. In fact, we asked them from a metric standpoint, which is how we, Myx Fitness, ended up partnering with Tom and his team at Polar. We asked them, what are the most important metrics to you? And what are the most important things to you? Heart rate and understanding heart rate is something that they valued as important, so that they had that personalization for effective and efficient workouts. But also variety in the workouts, so we're offering a broad variety of things. And actually looking at the coaches as life coaches as well. So that's a big piece of what we're implementing into the product as well. So together, all of that is what Myx Fitness is. A quick way that, when I don't have as much time as I just did to explain what it is, but how I summarize it for people is if Peloton is SoulCycle brought into the home, which is essentially John Foley's founder story. He and his wife couldn't get into their favorite SoulCycle class. They're like, there's got to be a better way. He's right, there is a better way. A new category is born. For us, the quick way for people to understand what we do and what you would get with Myx Fitness is, it's a bit of Orange Theory Fitness, which is a heart rate based cross-training, cardio, strength training workout, combined with Noom. If anybody's familiar with Noom, the weight loss app with behavior change, small steps to change, cognitive behavior therapy. Both of those blended together, brought into the home. And that's what Myx is.
When we were getting mic'd up, I was teasing Tom at one of these a couple of years ago. Julie might remember, but I actually wore a device and watched my heart rate change as I got up on stage. And we were talking about the NFL and how some of the players. Can you share that story with us?
Yeah, sure. Polar's got a big business in the consumer market, but we have a very significant business as well with pro sports teams. Something like 90% of the Olympic federations use Polar gear, not because we sponsor them, we don't. They buy it. And a lot of NFL teams, NBA teams, MLB teams as well use our product for their $1 million or $20 million babies. Make sure they're healthy, make sure they're training right. And what we see real time with those athletes, interestingly, we're talking about NFL now, is that the highest heart rates that they will record in a game are pre-game, standing on the sideline, getting, you're just so wound up about what they're about to do that actually is cranking the heart rate higher than when they're actually playing. And we're talking, that includes like long plays that involve, that aren't just like the 4 or 5 seconds and done. We're talking that includes like plays that go 80 yards, where they're running for a substantial duration. Still the highest heart rates consistently that we'll see are pre-game on the sidelines, just waiting to get out of the gate.
Jumping up and down in the tunnel.
Yeah, they're just cranked.
So when I hear the announcers say they just have to settle down, that there really is some science behind it. And I think it'd be kind of cool at some point, if you watch NASCAR, you see the RPMs and everything, but if the athlete's on your TV screen, you say, I
think that's coming.
I think it is.
There was a company here that was doing that.
MyVert did it. Yeah, they did it with a volleyball. And they were doing force impact with the volleyball players. I think they showed it on ESPN.
Yes.
And they did it. Yeah. Fascinating. Herbie, you talked a little bit about the technology that they have. Mm-hmm. How about some of the behavior change? What are you seeing if I want to use one of your use the product?
Yep.
What's the user experience?
So, you set up a profile, obviously, to understand, so we can understand as much as we can about the user, what their goals are, what their objectives are. The heart rate data, there's an assessment that we actually do in Myx. It's a patented assessment, and it's based on recovery. We call it the Myx score. And that will further help customize the workouts.
Talk a little bit more about that. So it's a heart rate?
It's a heart rate based assessment where it's a 20-minute session, right? Where the coach takes you through a cool down, a calming for the first couple minutes to get a resting heart rate. And then they gradually take you up to a series of intervals and push you to a max interval towards the end. And then we measure the speed of your recovery. So, everybody, and this is something that obviously even Apple has recognized that with the Apple Watch, right? Where they're trying to capture recovery, but they don't tell anybody what it means.
Right.
So that is a critical component to fitness level, right? So with that, we'll then take those numbers and adjust your zones so that we can further personalize your workouts. Further to that is just looking at the behavior of consumers and what types of workouts they're doing and what their performance is in those workouts so that we can, give them recommendations on things that they need or they should consider for their next session. Whether it's a cross-training session, a 30, 20-minute cross-training, or it should be some cardio, or they should be foam rolling because they haven't done any of that.
Tom, you talked about behavior change with NFL players, knowing when their heart rate is high. What about for the general public? What can the general public use from the data that you're collecting from the devices?
Well, it does all come down ultimately to behavior modification. If we go back to the rest and recovery and overnight recovery metrics, we call it nightly recharge. Last night I slept 4 hours and 5 minutes, according to my Polar watch. Was not a great night. It's got these terrible numbers on it. Jet lag. I came from the East Coast yesterday. My diet was poor. My hydration was off. I was up late cranking on some stuff on the computer. I was violating all of the basic tenets of good sleep hygiene, right? It's just like this is the way it goes. So this is a really easy example that I'm fairly sensitized now to proper sleep hygiene. But when you start seeing poor numbers in your nightly recharge score day after day, if you do, or as that woman I mentioned earlier saw those terrible numbers consistently on her ANS component of her score, you then start to ask yourself these questions of, well, why is that? Is it because I'm drinking caffeine too late in the day? Is it because I've got too much screen time too close to bed? Is it because I'm dealing with family stress when I get home? Can I park some of that before I get home? Are there other factors that are affecting it? One thing for me is I'll make sure that I'm really well hydrated before I get home at 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock at night, so that I don't have to be consuming a lot of liquid, which means fewer trips to the washroom in the night, less disruption. So the data can give you this insight into how your body is responding to choices that you have complete control over each and every day. And if you exercise authority over those choices, suddenly you're sleeping like a champ, you feel great, you have more patience with the kids, you're better at work, your productivity goes through the roof both physically and emotionally and intellectually. Without the data, you don't understand that you have an issue that is entirely addressable. That's the key thing. So many people have an issue that is entirely addressable that they're not aware of. The products that we make, the wearable technology business in general, delivers that empowerment that allows us to really exercise authority over ourselves and make better choices. Now, there also are companies like Polar that are helping do that for you. For example, I wear this product 24/7, 365. It's knowing everything that I'm doing physically, it's knowing how I'm resting and recovering, and it's then giving me a recommendation each day of what I ought to be doing today, exercise-wise, based on what occurred overnight and in the preceding day and the preceding 7 days. So it's actually curating the guidance for me. I don't actually have to figure it out. So that's relevant to anybody, even if you don't have the time and energy to ask yourselves the questions. In this case, the watch is just saying, take it easy today, or go train like a champ.
To build on that for a second, it's just, in general, it's, the technology, the innovation in technology is something that I think is really, it has to be harnessed in the right way for the right people. Right? Like back to those consumer segments that we're talking about, and then how do you get lasting change, awareness to outcome, right? It's small steps and what's manageable for people, how much are they willing to take on with that, bit by bit. But what's wonderful about what's happening with tech, and even with like AI and this connected in-home fitness tech revolution in a way that's happening now, is that we can start to really reach some of these consumers who have been hard to get to before, and that just couldn't fit fitness into their lifestyle. So it's promising because, look, there's some sad reality out there about the industry in the sense that it's bigger than it's ever been at $32 billion, right?
Right.
But at the same time, there's a projection from the New England Journal of Medicine that came out like just before Christmas, and we were using a smaller number before, but the numbers they're saying are that within the next 10 years, half of the US is going to be either overweight or obese. So it's like, what's the disconnect? This industry is huge. There's all this products, there's innovation, there's revenue, there's some companies are doing really well, but then there's like this huge portion of the population that it's not resonating with them, and they haven't figured out how to take those small steps to change. So, and I'm, saying this in a way because it's also, that's one of the founding principles of why we started Myx Fitness, to reach that portion of the population in the right bite-size, components for them to start to make change and not feel alienated. I mean, marketing perfect people and perfect bodies and perfect homes, living a certain, healthy lifestyle is a turnoff, obviously, to many, many Americans. They in a way that they almost like reject it, like make fun of it, so that it's like it becomes cool not to be healthy and fit. Oh, you're one of those types. So it's like, how do we make it more approachable, accessible, and something that they're willing to do? It's a serious problem, obviously, and it's not just fitness. Obviously, there's nutrition plays a huge factor, but the small steps to lasting change, the psychology behind all that, it does start with earning your shower, 15 minutes in the morning. After that shower, you're like, wait a minute, I already worked out. Am I really going to have a cinnamon bun for breakfast, or should I have a bowl of cereal, which isn't great either, but it's better than a cinnamon bun, or do I want to have a smoothie? And you just start to gradually, you're like, I really feel good on those days where I do earn my shower. And then you start making better choices. Maybe you slip by the time you get to dinner and you have an IPA with your dinner. Okay, fine. But at least you're on the way to being healthier and not part of that 50%.
It's really true, what Herbie's talking about. Reference a company out there, you might want to check it out. It's called 99 Walks. This is like a program that has just been launched by another company. It has nothing to do with Polar whatsoever, but their whole thing is just get women in America, where the average dress size is a 16. The average dress size in the United States of America is a 16. Get the women who are in that average to go and walk together in groups of 2 or 3, local community, every day, 1 mile for a month. Just make it accessible. We try to do that with our product, with the guidance that it provides in the morning. Say, hey, here's a 15-minute, little routine you can do even in your home fitness again,
right,
without the gear. So the democratization of access to fitness and healthy lifestyle, and making it something that people can take on their own terms, in their own way, in the privacy of their home, without fear of judgment, and without fear of failure that they may have felt when they've walked into, I'll call it the traditional gym.
Mm-hmm. And that's a big piece of it. So in the segmentation work that we did, part of that 40% workout for me, the sub-segments there, of course, there's personas, right? There's people that are anti-gym, they're not comfortable in a gym, they don't like the way they look in workout clothes, they don't want to ask for help when they're at the gym, although they want professional help. And home streaming content helps with that, 100%. Right? And then there's people that just don't have the time. They're harried parents, they're working professionals that travel with kids, without kids. It's just impossible for them, or they feel like it's impossible. We have to make it, easier and accessible for them.
Yeah, that's what both our companies. I mean, we happen to be collaborating, but in the end, we're both kind of pointing towards that same notion of.
I mean, Polar had that campaign years ago that always stuck with me. It was with Timex. It was every body has and you showed all different body types, and it was like, I remember seeing it at ISPO in Munich, and it was just like every single body type, and that's when we started working on this, it was like, okay, that's a logical, perfect partner for this. Anyway.
We've got a little time for questions from the audience. Anyone have a question for either one of these distinguished fellows? We have a microphone.
Thank you. Hey there.
Hello.
Thanks so much. This is so fun. I have a very practical question, and it's just something that comes up a lot for me personally. I was a triathlete too. Now I'm an ex-triathlete, but with all the new wearables and the move to wearables, and you talk about Tom wearing your Polar 24/7. What about the athletes who are, or not athletes? I mean, I think we're all athletes, but what about the people who forget to charge them? Like we talk about wearing these wearables 24/7, and people wear them and then they run out of battery life, and then they throw the towel in. Like, how do you manage the battery life component of these wearables, and how does that affect how people are willing to adopt behaviors? Again, I know it's pretty simple, but curious your response to that.
It's a super important question. It seems like such a basic thing, battery life, and running out of juice. Well, it all kind of collapses if there's no juice. We've worked extremely hard at Polar actually to optimize on battery life. This product I'm wearing today, I'll charge it once a week, and I'll train 2 hours a day with GPS running full blast during that 7-day period. So it's not endless, it's not limitless, but 7 days is pretty good. It'll charge up in about an hour and a half. If I happen to miss one night because the battery, conks out in the middle of the night, the sky does not fall. Life goes on. But this extension of battery life in devices that we make, has been specifically done to address the very issue that you brought up. Because you can make the most wonderful, most powerful, most fully featured device in the world, delivering amazing metrics, but if you do have to charge it literally every day, and it was in the fairly recent past that was the case, and with many companies, it still is the case, but not all, fewer and fewer. That was a real gating issue. Now, the question is, how do you do that? You don't want to increase the size of the battery because we could make a giant thing. We don't want to do that. So it really becomes around efficiency of the operating system, efficiency of the software in executing what it needs to execute while just sipping on the battery. And the industry in general, and Polar in particular, just continues to get better and better at that every day. If you can find an hour a week to charge this, the problem disappears. And I think we found that is in fact the case with the customer base. So try a Polar Vantage and see if that doesn't change your life.
We are, I'm sorry, out of time. You guys could be around afterwards if you have any
Yeah,
questions.
sure.
So
sure.
we'll go in the back. I want to thank you both for sharing some of the information, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Pleasure.